Hello, I'm Nelson Liu, and thanks for joining us for Western Perspective. This week, she's the architect looking to bring Perth back to life as Lord Mayor of the city. Sandy Anghie wants to elevate Perth on the list of the world's livable cities, making a difference by improving homelessness, safety, governance and retail during COVID-19. On the next part of our local council election series, Sandy talks about how she's going to re-establish Perth's identity if elected. Sandy Anghie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Nelson.
So you're nominating for Lord Mayor of the City of Perth. Why do you want to be the Mayor?
So I've always lived and worked in Perth. I love this place and I think it's time to bring our city back to life, and I would love to lead the charge on that, and I know I can make a difference. There's three things that I'd like to focus on. First, I think we need to fix the fundamentals. These are things that we all agree on. They're non-negotiable. So that's practical solutions for people experiencing homelessness, dealing with safety and security on our streets. Good governance, of course, is essential, and also support for our retailers and COVID-19 recovery. But I think even if we fix those things, it's not enough. We need more. We need to establish our identity in Perth. You know, what's our point of difference? We need to enhance on and build the great assets we already have to elevate our city to the top of the list of the world's most livable cities. And thirdly, I think we need to start celebrating Perth. This is a great place. We've got so much to offer, and I think COVID-19 has highlighted that. We're currently the envy of the world, going about our normal lives while everyone else is in lockdown and wearing masks. And I think now is the time to leverage off that and to start talking positively about this great place. And as Lord Mayor, I would be encouraging everyone to start talking about the great things that Perth has to offer.
You're currently in architecture at the moment. How does your current career play into it?
So my current career, I guess I've sort of got a portfolio of work at the moment. So I have my own residential architecture practice where I'm focused on residential, so houses. And should I become Lord Mayor, then I would put that practice on hold to fulfil the role, which is obviously a full-time role. With Historic Heart of Perth, I've been in the process of handing that over to a group of volunteers. They're called our Historic Heartbeat Committee, and they're looking forward to taking Historic Heart in a new direction, this year. So that's exciting. So that work would be wrapped up for the role of Lord Mayor. I also have a column on architecture and I'm editor of an architecture magazine. I guess I'd work out if those things could fit in with the role. If they couldn't, then I'd be happy to just solely focus on the role of Lord Mayor.
What kind of difference do you think you'll make if you're elected?
Yeah, I think I can make a difference. Like I said, with my broad skill set and the things I bring to the table, my past experience in leading the Historic Heart project and the change that we made, like I said, on a small budget and limited resources, I think I can take the things that I've learnt and build on it and amplify it across the city. So if you look at my platform, my website, sandyanghie.com, one of the central ideas around my platform is this idea of a city of neighbourhoods. So if you think of the great cities of the world, the places that everyone wants to visit, you think about them in terms of their neighbourhoods. So for example, Covent Garden in London or Soho in New York, Montmartre in Paris. Your experience of a city is at street level, and that's what's important. So when we talk about driving not only the residential population of the city, I think the current target is from 30,000 to 90,000 in 2050. When you talk about helping support retail, helping to encourage business, it's all about getting people to want to be in the city. And that's about an active neighbourhood, an active street life, things to do and a sense of community.
Okay, let's put a hypothetical out there. Seeing what the City of Perth Council has been like in the past few years, what would you do differently?
Well, I think, I haven't read the report in detail yet, the 2,000 pages, but it's definitely on my to-do list over the next few weeks. I think there's a lot to be learnt just from the snippets that I picked up from the summary and what's been in the press. And I think, the kind of things that went on wouldn't be acceptable in the corporate world. If you were, like, for example, in the not-for-profit boards I've been in on the last 10 years, I think, we need to gain not only the trust of the public back at the City of Perth, but also the respect of the public. And, to do that, I think that the roles of councillor and Lord Mayor, we need to set an example in the way that, we treat each other as fellow councillors and Lord Mayor, and the way we treat the community. And we're in a privileged position really to be elected members and representing the constituents of the city. And I think that always has to be in mind, that whatever we do, we're acting as representatives for our city, and we're meant to be acting in the best interests of those people and our city.
A lot of political experts are saying that young people aren't as engaged when it comes to voting in local government elections or even nominating for council. What's your view on young people getting involved?
Yeah, I think it would be great to see more young people involved in local government, and that's not just for the city of Perth. I think that goes for councils across WA. I think, the young people need to have a say in their future, because the decisions we make now, a lot of them won't come to fruition for, 5-10 years' time. So, the decisions that we make now are affecting young people, and they need to be part of that discussion. And I think, young people, I'm too old to be the millennial generation. There's a lot of talk about the millennials being the purpose-driven generation. They bring a different voice and a different way of thinking to the table, and I think that really needs to be embraced and encouraged. And it goes back to my point earlier about it being really important for the council to regain the trust and respect of the community, because I think if we can achieve that, then you would get more people putting their hand up to be involved. If they felt like their voice could be heard, if they felt like they were able to contribute and make a difference in a meaningful way, I think we'd get a much better outcome.
What will you promise for young ratepayers if you're elected?
Yeah, so my pledge and my promise, I guess, in this Lord Mayoral campaign is the three things I said. So fixing the fundamentals of practical solutions to people experiencing homelessness, of dealing with crime and safety and security, of support for retailers and COVID recovery, and paramount is good governance to make all that happen. And then in addition to that, building a real sense of identity for Perth and elevating us in terms of world livability and celebrating our great city.
Sandy, Anghie, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nelson.
And now, the AMA WA's President, Dr. Andrew Miller, provides his weekly COVID-19 update.
Hi, thanks for your time. Been a busy week again around COVID, of course, and in Western Australia we continue with our good fortune due to border closures, as was reinforced by the Federal Court Justice, who said that that's been the most important thing for keeping us healthy. What worries me, though, is how we're going to deal with outbreaks when they do eventually come to Western Australia, which is inevitable at some point, given that we do have people still coming into the state in the incubation period. So we had a quarantine breach the other day. Chap flew in from over east without permission, then got some chest pains, presumably during the discussion around whether or not he was allowed to stay in the state. Ended up being taken to hospital, dropped off there, went from there instead of to quarantine to a backpackers, and then was picked up at a pub apparently by CCTV. Now, the worrying thing about this is we've got a very small number of people coming into the state now, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have better technology in place. No blame on any individual. I know everyone's working really hard, the government's working hard, but in Hong Kong you get a little wrist bracelet that attaches to an app on your phone. It then knows where you're supposed to be in terms of your apartment or whatever. You can quarantine at home, and then it lets the authorities know if you're not within that space. In China, if you go in there and you're given permission to quarantine at home, they put a device on your front door that if the front door is open, the police are alerted. So there's a number of different technologies, including some excellent ones that have been developed by Australian companies. There's a thing called the isolator, ISOL 8, the number 8 and an R. That's worth looking up to see what kind of technology is capable in the way of tracking where people are during quarantine. Now, this might sound like we're treating people like criminals, but no, we're giving them the privilege of coming into our state when they could be during the incubation period of COVID still, having picked it up in the community elsewhere. And so I think it's a fair enough insurance policy for the people of Western Australia. It gives those on quarantine some better freedoms, perhaps allow more people to quarantine outside of hotels if we know that they're going to be within a restricted location, and because the hotels have clearly been a problem. giving just a deterrent to this with big fines obviously doesn't work. We know that people are always going to do the wrong thing, and or the small proportion of people will do the wrong thing, and why should everyone suffer because of that? So we'd love to hear from the government as to what technology they're going to bring in to make it a smarter border whilst keeping it a hard border. Now, in relation to Victoria, very disappointed to say more than 3,000 healthcare workers infected there now. For every patient infected in aged care, there has been one healthcare worker infected in aged care. These are horrendous statistics, and it's a multifactorial problem, which means there's a lot of things contributing to it. But one of the things that isn't helping is that we have one of the most budget approaches to PPE of any country. And if you look at Korea, they certainly have had a very good record with their healthcare worker infection rates being incredibly low. No coincidence that in that country, they mandate pretty much the full gear for people who are dealing with COVID patients. This is a matter of workplace safety. It's not just keeping the community safe from COVID. There are also very strict legal responsibilities on employers, and they need to fix that immediately. There's some suggestion around quarantine as well, that we would be looking at offering inducements to the AFL by way of avoiding quarantine for AFL executives. I think the people of Western Australia will go berserk, and that'll be bad for the government, bad for football if we find out that there are execs who don't have to do what the common people have to do in order to get back into the state. So let's remain sensible, keep our focus where it should be, which is on keeping the community healthy, not only in a physical sense, but our economy is much healthier than it would be otherwise if we hadn't been good with our quarantining and with our border closures. So let's be sensible and keep all of that in place. Is the rest of the system ready? Well, at this stage, it depends on workforce largely. And one of the disturbing things I'm hearing now is the number of people who are considering leaving the workforce because they're not feeling like they're going to be looked after. They've had a look at Victoria. They see that, in fact, the PPE guidelines in Western Australia, the workplace guidelines, are not as good as they were in Victoria. I'll say that again, not as good as Victoria. So there are a lot of people making plans now just to get out of the system, unfortunately. Some people have no choice and they'll continue to work there, but we don't want to be down to bare bones. We are already behind in workforce because normally we would rely on a lot more international people coming in than we're able to get at the moment, partly because of our border restriction, partly because obviously people are being encouraged to stay in their own countries, particularly UK, Ireland, that we traditionally depend upon. So these are all things that we will continue to press the government on. It's very important in a democracy that we're, even in times of success, we are asking the questions about, well, what's going to happen next? Where's this all going? And again, another promising week around vaccine, and hopefully we'll see that coming early next year. But we can't take our foot off the accelerator. We need to avoid what's happened in Vic, because I'll leave you with this thought. The only reason the case numbers are coming down in Victoria, the only reason those figures are looking positive, down around the 100 a day at the moment, is that they're in full lockdown. The price of a full lockdown in health terms, in economic terms, is unbearable. And the problem they're going to have is when they ease that lockdown, if the cases ramp up again, they're going to have to go back into it again. So you can see the compounding losses are just devastating for any community. And that's why we will continue to nip at the heels of government, suggest improvements, even though that might offend people along the way. Really important that we have these honest discussions, and thank you so much for your time today.
And that's all for this week. We'll be back with another episode of WP next time, but until then, it's back to you, Ivan and Sarah.
Thank you, Nelson. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on the website and social media pages.
See you next weekend and have a good night.
Wish you good health and take care.